Jim?
A little bit, a little bit.
To be fair, they probably died. It's just as upbeat as they did when they, were first found. So,
I accept this. Yeah, we will be talking about the episode and a whole bunch of other fun stuff tonight. Can we start off talking, though, gentlemen, about crossbows?
sure.
I'm a fan.
We posted it on the Walking Dead TV podcast Facebook page, so if you are, or the Facebook group specifically, so if you haven't joined that, you should definitely check it out. There's lots of fun discussion in there about The Walking Dead all the time, and occasionally people post links to Walking Dead news and different funny Walking Dead stuff, and by occasionally I mean like 45 times a day. One of the ones that was posted today that I found very funny was a behind-the-scenes video, quote-unquote, of Norman Reedus first being introduced to the crossbow, and it's quite enjoyable. Did you guys all get a chance to watch it?
Yes, it is pretty funny.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
You wouldn't think it'd be that difficult to use a crossbow, but apparently it takes some getting used to.
I wouldn't think there'd be so many alternate ways to use the crossbow.
And some of which I'd like to see on the actual show, because that would just be funny. But anyway, gentlemen, what do you say we get right into the episode?
Yeah, that
Sounds
sounds
good.
like a good idea.
Sure.
This week on The Walking Dead, Season 4, Episode 4, the episode was entitled Indifference. It was the third out of 4 episodes to be titled with a single word starting with the letter I, which is kind of interesting, and I think we have a voicemail about that later. And it was written by Matthew Negrete, or Negresh, I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce that, and directed by Trisha Blarock. And this episode reminded me a lot of 18 Miles Out, or Clear, or a few others in terms of its structure anyway. It didn't focus on the whole prison. We barely saw the prison at all this week.
Yeah, it was definitely a more focused episode, and I really appreciated that, which we'll get to.
Yeah, which prompted a couple people on the Facebook group to mention the term bottle episode. And so I thought we might take a brief pause before we even get into the discussion of the plot to discuss what a bottle episode is. Because while I understood at least some of them were saying it as a pun because of the whole Bob Stuckey being an alcoholic thing, this is not a bottle episode. No, seriously.
I know,
that's
I
what the
just didn't make
discussion
that
was.
connection because it's not a bottle episode, but that's funny.
This is pretty much the antithesis of a bottle episode, actually. What a bottle episode is basically an episode that's written and designed to save money. It's designed to only use currently existing sets so they don't have to build anything new. It usually limits the sets to just 1 or 2 that they've already got built and on hand. So they can use that money elsewhere, in an episode that's going to have a big special effects sequence, or just an episode that's going to have a bunch of new sets because they need the school set because the kids in the series are going to a new school this season or something. A bottle episode would be something like Breaking Bad's episode Fly, and quite frankly, a lot of episodes of The Walking Dead over the last couple of years could be considered bottle episodes to an extent. An episode that takes place almost entirely inside the farmhouse, or almost entirely inside the prison, and specifically the cell blocks that we always see. They could legitimately be considered bottle episodes. An episode like this one, though, where we are only in the prison for about 2 minutes, and the entire rest of the episode is completely brand new sets and locations, that is not a bottle episode. So just know for the future, bottle episode, that means you're only seeing things you've already seen before, and usually very limited in its scope of those things.
Well, not only that, there was also that giant sea of zombies at the end there, where they're at the veterinary clinic or what have you, trying to make their way out. I mean, that's a lot of special effects, a lot of makeup, and a lot of extras.
Yeah. Although, I guess you can technically have special effects sequences in a bottle episode. You just generally try not to because you're trying to save money. But yeah, and they're in a brand new location, the veterinary hospital. It's completely new. We've never seen any of that stuff before, and so that means it costs money, which means not a bottle episode.
Let alone a gas station and an entire neighborhood, and there's just lots of different things going on there.
And a severed leg and all kinds of stuff.
Community had a lot of fun with their bottle episode where it just takes place almost entirely in the study room and makes fun of the concept of bottle rooms since Abed's character
I forget what the name of that episode is, but that's the one where they're looking for Annie's pen, right?
Yes, yeah.
That's one of my favorite episodes of the show, actually.
It's a very fun episode, and I think if anything, that episode kind of popularized the term of bottle episode is because more people kind of started using that more often, despite how accurate they may be using that term. So.
Right. So, like I said, this episode is almost not in the prison at all, but we start there. In the beginning of the episode, we have two simultaneous stories. We've got Rick, who's preparing to go out on a mission with Carol. He's gassing up one of their vehicles, the old puke green Hyundai, and he's gassing up with the same gas canister that was used to burn Karen and David.
Something in this opening sequence that was kind of weird. I don't know if anybody else thought this, but I certainly did. As he was like seeing the way it went down in his mind, like in his mind's eye, we see Carol like stabbing Karen in the back of the head while she's sleeping or and sick or what have you. I mean, he's kind of going over the. It seems like it should have been the last episode, like when he was looking at the clues. Maybe that would have fit better there. But for some reason, through this whole opening sequence with Carol talking to the young girl, Lizzie, and, in the speech she was giving, and then these slow, ponderous shots of Rick, I thought Rick was going to kill Carol.
Yeah, I mean, what Rick was planning on doing was certainly something that seemed to be quite a bit in flux, at least in my mind, for most of the episode, where I kept going, is he going to do this, or is he going to do that? He's going to do absolutely nothing? He's going to let Carol dig her own grave, metaphorically speaking. I quite enjoyed that, not knowing what he was going to do.
It reminded me, actually, of one of my favorite episodes, which is actually in the second season, I cannot remember right now, the one where Shane shoots Otis, save the last one. And that episode has a similar cold open where it has Rick narrating some things about Shane and how he always was one that got the job done amidst this kind of flash forward of things that were crazy things that were going to happen later on in the episode.
So while we're seeing Rick's side of the story, where he's visualizing in his mind eye what he thinks Carol did, or at least how he thinks she carried out the deaths of Karen and David, we have Carol going to visit Lizzie over in the quarantine zone, and they make a nice use of not quite a two-way mirror, but I guess it's more of a visitor zone for the prison where inmates could communicate with family members through a section of glass or something along those extents. It's used quite well to give some minor reflection in the scene and stuff like that. But it's a whole conversation between Lizzie and Carol. Where they're talking about how everybody in the cell block is going to die soon. And Lizzie has this interesting conception of turning into a zombie, where to her it's just transformation, to use a Breaking Bad visual. It's just a transformation, just in the same way that a kid turning into an adult is transformation. She doesn't really seem to grasp the difference. And Carol tries to tell her otherwise, and she can't really consider the walkers to be human or another form of human. They're just dead, they're just corpses, and they're a threat. And while this is all happening, it's intercutting back and forth with Rick's mind's eye version of what he believed happened.
Hey Jordan, are you a fan of Breaking Bad?
I'm a huge fan of Breaking Bad. Can we talk about Breaking Bad?
Just the scene was humorous to me in a sense that it's almost like it's like Carol's trying to tell a child that there's no such thing as Santa Claus spoilers.
Oh man.
Yeah, it did kind of have that feeling a little bit. But I know it's interesting. Carol's relationship with Lizzie is something that we haven't seen a lot of, but what we've seen, the four of us rather, have had various levels of problems with how it's played out. Like, I like the idea, but some of the actual execution doesn't seem to be gelling for at least me personally. But here we're dealing with two people who are hardened towards the zombie apocalypse in very different ways, who can't agree on how they're hardened. It's almost like a Methodist and a Lutheran disagreeing on some minor issue of religion or something, where it's just something that only those two denominations disagree on, and everybody else either completely disagrees with or completely agrees with. It was very strange to me to see Carol having to try to talk sense into Lizzie when Carol's already. I've used the term crazy pants several times this season to describe her.
I agree to an extent, and it just. I'm a big fan of what happens with the Carol storyline in this episode, so it's like it feels like it has to hit these beats before she's not as big of a presence. We don't know what's really going to happen in the coming weeks. But I mean, if she's trying to impart some information onto Lizzie before she leaves, not knowing what's going to happen at the end of the day, knowing that she's going out for a kind of supply run. I mean, for all she knows, that she could be either being taken out by Rick or being left there or what have you. Like, I like that the show's giving us something to kind of connect with between those two, and it's showing us that Carol has at least tried to impart some very useful information to Lizzie, and it worked for me. I like a scene like this. I like seeing that kind of given how it was kind of edited together for this cold open. I like how it played in.
Oh, absolutely. And again, it feels like we're setting up Lizzie for a Ben and Billy storyline from the books, which makes me very excited. Even though again, a lot of stuff leading up to it has been weird. The places they can go, I find very, very interesting.
Yeah, to me, it just felt very much like a goodbye conversation. I think Carol knew at that point that she probably wasn't coming back. I mean, if you think about it, the two of them going off on a run, given how short-handed they were and how everything was thinned out. I mean, granted, I know they're short on food, but you'd think you'd give it some more time to make sure the others came back to help secure things. So this felt very. It didn't feel forced. That's not the right term, but it just felt like there's more to it than the stated purpose.
I agree with you completely, Russ. I think she was kind of putting a button on it for the time being, not knowing what the kind of what the rest of the day, the week, whatever would have in store for her and her adopted daughters. Whatnot. It's nice that she had some parting words to say.
Certainly hedging her bets.
Sure.
She wouldn't come back. Interesting that we only really see her after that first episode with the girls interacting with Lizzie. Mm-hmm. And I kind of wish we'd see at least Mika being there, even if she doesn't say anything, even if she's mostly listening. It's strange to me that we're only really getting scenes with the two of them. But I understand working with children, particularly on film, is very difficult. There's very strict laws about it, but it would still be nice to see.
Yeah, I was going to say three words: child labor laws.
Yeah. But I mean, even if you just have an establishing shot of her being there in the corner, not really paying attention, and then you never show her again, that's enough for me to at least be like, okay, at least we're not forgetting about this character.
So they should have just used Mika like they've used Chris Hardwick on Talking Dead and just do a bunch of establishing shots of him nodding his head so he's not spoiled by the interviewee that he's talking to.
Yeah, and props to him for admitting
that was funny. I really,
it's very surprising.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just like every time you watch it, it's like all he does is just sit there and nod his head. Like, you kind of knew something was up, so that I got a really big chuckle out of that.
So after that opening, montage isn't the right word. What do you call a scene that's just cross-cutting between two different storylines? Is there a term for that?
I mean, it's the cold open of the show. I don't think it's for that kind of specific thing. It probably is something, but I think it's safe to say after that cold open, fair enough.
Fair enough. So Rick and Carol go out on their supply run in I don't know, I'd say a nearby neighborhood, a neighborhood that's within driving distance. And along the way, Rick isn't really saying anything, but Carol is rambling's not the right term, but unprompted, she is now defending her actions towards Karen and David to Rick, which to me implies guilt because he's literally saying nothing and she just keeps adding on more and more. And I had to do it for this reason, and it was okay because of this. And she's very much trying to convince herself. But so they finally get to where they're going, and I think right as they get out of the vehicle, Rick says something, but otherwise he doesn't even respond. And they find a station wagon outside the house that has "Don't mind the dust" or something like that written on "Pardon our dust" on the side of the car, which I thought was funny because they're walking up, you can see there's writing, and you expect it to be like "Don't open dead inside" or
"Wash me,
we're still alive," but it's a "Wash me" type thing, and it was like, oh, that's a little funny thing from before the apocalypse to see. So they find this vehicle. It's clear because of the dust being written on that it's only been there, or at least it's been touched by human hands very recently, like within the last couple of days. And they don't see anybody around them, so they go inside one of the nearby houses, and they start scanning it for food and medicine. They're looking for any type of food they can find and first aid kits, that kind of stuff. And they're surprised by a zombie, which comes downstairs and almost lands on Carol. Carol takes it out, and then they hear some more noise from upstairs in this one house. And out from the bathroom come Sam and Anna, the two reddest of red shirts I've ever seen.
Yeah, if you didn't know these two characters were going to most likely die, I mean, it could have been written on their forehead to make it a little more clear, I guess.
And not only that, I was kind of wondering how they survived that long.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I know they said they got separated from their pack or whatever, but still, I'm just like, really?
I mean, they survived inside of a bathroom for 2 days because of one walker outside the door, so they have good locking door skills, apparently.
They're the masters of unlocking. Hey, a little Resident Evil reference for all the oldsters out there.
Zombie fun.
Now, you guys are familiar with the old game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
That's where you would link up actors with the movies that they've been in together, and so you would link one actor to another actor through a movie that they've been in until you get 6 degrees separate from them. And the common knowledge, if you will, is that you can get from any person in Hollywood to any other person in Hollywood within just 6 degrees of separation, and Kevin Bacon's in there because it rhymes.
Well, you specifically can get to Kevin Bacon
Because he's in so many things.
With-
And because
with
he's
many.
named after the most awesome food.
Yes, those are the reasons going.
So I found it interesting, not quite 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon connection in this episode, but since you already brought up Breaking Bad, as I did, Aaron, I thought I might touch on this because I thought it was kind of interesting. So 2 weeks ago now, was it on The Walking Dead? We had that episode where the zombie had their face smushed right through the fence by the weight of all the other zombies behind them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my zombie kill of the week.
All right, so y'all remember that.
Good times.
Hopefully the listeners will remember that as well.
Tasty.
So that was The Walking Dead. Now, 2 episodes later, we had this character, Sam, played by the actor Robin Lord Taylor, who I saw immediately. I know that guy from something. I can't think of what it is. You know, he's one of those guys. So I googled it when the episode was done, and I know him from the movie Accepted, the 2006 film with
Justin Long.
I think Louis Black is in it, Justin Long, Jonah Hill, Adam Gershwin, and an actor named Jeremy Howard. Now, if you've seen the movie Accepted, you'll remember Jeremy Howard as the really weird guy who thinks he has telekinetic powers and may actually have them by the end of the movie, or pyrokinetic. I forget exactly. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie. Anyway, the only other place I've seen that actor is in an episode of Breaking Bad. And in that episode of Breaking Bad, Jeremy Howard is high on methamphetamines and is rambling about nothing else other than how afraid he is of chain link fences, because if you are surrounded by too many people, you could be pushed right through a chain link fence. So that is your 6 degrees of separation between Walking Dead and Breaking Bad for this week, using 2 actors and a very strange concept that happened to appear twice on the same network, being pushed through a chain link fence by the weight of people behind you.
And we'll be putting up the PowerPoint presentation and the flowchart showing all that on the website.
There will be some Venn diagrams, etc.
I can't wait to hear more references to old college, high school comedy movies like Accepted or whatever the hell else. We can't hardly wait, whatever else we come across.
10 Things I Hate About You.
Easy A.
Oh, I like Easy A quite a bit.
It's a good movie. There's a difference.
Who's the actor? I always forget his name, but he plays the dad. He's in Hunger Games. He's in Captain America.
Stanley
Stanley
Tucci.
Tucci.
Stanley Tucci. I love Stanley
Yeah.
Tucci in Easy Eye. He is hilarious in that movie. So, Act 2, Walking Dead, after that third
Oh, is that
Breaking Bad.
what we're talking about? We're talking about?
I heard a rumor that was the case. I can't verify it, though. So they run into Sam and Anna, who are a couple of, I guess you could say, post-apocalyptic hippies.
Yeah, that's very fair.
Or hipsters, something along those lines. Nice guys, not very long for this world. It's pretty obvious from the beginning. They're just too damn nice.
Yeah, when you explain that you have a gun, but it'll probably take you 5 or 6 shots to get one zombie, you're like, oh, okay, well, that's good. Thanks for trying.
But they do have apricots.
True.
So they've only been in that neighborhood for 2 days. They explain that they kind of move around constantly. They don't wait for a group to fall apart and get destroyed. They just keep going. And Sam has some minor wounds. He has a dislocated shoulder, but Carol patches him up. Apparently she learned how to do that back when she was in an abusive relationship. She Googled it to see how to do that for herself because it was easier than explaining it to ER nurses, which is a horrifying thought.
Well, it's interesting because when she does it, Rick is kind of looking at her askance like, how the hell does she know how to do this? It's not until later that she discloses that.
Right.
That she looked it up herself on the internet.
That was the second time in a brief period of time where something happened, and I thought, okay, maybe Rick is coming around and seeing that even with her flaws, she's very useful. The first time he saved her, the zombie was falling down the stairs. He, shouted out to her and made her move back. And then when he's looking at her, he's kind of impressed with the fact that she was able to fix his shoulder. So I guess maybe it was like a false positive kind of thing going on. I kind of started coming around to the fact that, well, maybe this is going to end okay. Maybe this is they're going to have their walkabout and. They'll have their understanding with each other, and Carol will understand where Rick is coming from. Rick will understand where Carol is coming from. They'll agree that maybe moving forward they'll consult. She'll consult him or the group or whatever before she kind of acts on her own. So I thought it just, like I said, it just kind of had my mind spinning the other way. And as we'll get to, that definitely wasn't the case.
Russ, I know what you mean, because I do think that this whole Rick Carol plot does serve as much as this is a Carol story, it does work to Rick's advantage too, because you're seeing him what I took is that he is kind of throughout the day considering his options on what he wants to do with Carol. I don't think he actually reached the conclusion that he gets to regarding her until we got to the end of the episode. I think he did take the day to kind of observe Carol on the supply run to see, how what he feels like his interaction would be in weighing her usefulness versus the choices that she feels that she would make in certain situations. So I think it did work to the episode's advantage of showing kind of Rick's reactions to Carol's actions.
It was almost like Rick was giving Carol the 3 questions, right?
Yes, very much so. Yes,
and to accentuate it, one of the things I noticed is when Rick asks Sam the first question, like he doesn't even get the full question out to him. It's just how many zombies have you killed? And then boom, they cut. I can't remember if it was commercial or they cut back to Daryl and crew, but
just cut to the scene. But go on.
Yeah, but they cut it off right there, and I'm like, and that's when it kind of hit me. I'm like, this is about Carol's 3 questions, quote unquote 3 questions, not about him questioning these people. This is her test.
It's fun to see how a stronger show is able to establish something like that too, where he just asks kind of one question and cuts it off immediately. You don't have to follow up or give a real kind of reminder of what this is because you're just kind of clued into what's going on already with that kind of stuff.
They're trusting the audience, which is always appreciated.
Yes.
And dangerous.
So in addition to Sam's dislocated shoulder, Anna also has some issues with her leg. I guess it had been broken at some point in previously and it healed sideways, if you will.
These people.
I don't know how to explain it better than that. And it has a very distinctive tattoo on the calf.
I was going to say, shut off a rat ink, dude, for breaking it like that.
Totally.
So, like you guys said, they ask them the questions, how many times have you killed, how many people have you killed, and why, although we don't see all of them on screen, because, Sam and Anna want to come back with them. They want to come back to the prison if they can. And, Rick warns them, I can bring you back, we can bring you back, but we've got this really bad flu outbreak right now at the prison. You may be safer out here completely separated from us. But they decide they want to come on along with them. And, they want to help Carol and Rick look around for more supplies, and Rick wants them to stay put because, like we've already pointed out multiple times, they're fairly useless. And Carol, urges them to look for supplies against Rick's wishes. And it's clear that they're not too much of a fit for what the work is, and Rick does not want them to go anywhere, but they insist, and it's all a big mess. But Rick eventually gives them both handguns as well as his watch, and he tells them to be back here in 2 hours, and if you need help, shoot the guns in the air, and we will come and find you.
This is where in retrospect, given what we'll get to later, I was a little confused because Carol makes a point of saying that they should come with and help, which to me was basically saying, these people are okay, we should let them in. But then later on, she's so quick to be like, no, we need to get out of here. They're not coming back. We need to bail. That's the only part of the episode that just kind of had me scratching my head a little bit.
See, I read it as she was worried Rick was going to just straight up murder her, like kill her, and she wanted other people around so he'd be less likely to do it.
I wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
I wouldn't think that. That wasn't on my mind. I thought it was more of. I think Carol's just quick to realize the usefulness of certain scenarios and see the inevitability of certain scenarios. At this point, I think she sees like 2 people that are healthy to an extent, and ones that it does in her mind. It seems like an obvious choice not to just straight up abandon people that can come back, that can find sanctuary with them, and if anything, be a helpful resource to have in terms of having people that are healthy help out at the prison for the time being, as opposed to having just sick people and like 4 or less healthy people. But then you get towards the end of the episode, they're not back, and Carol sees that she's already seen one person that's dead. She knows who these people are. They're not the quickest on the draw, and so she's able to make the reasonable assumption that time is up and that they need to leave. Like it felt right to me. It didn't feel confusing, but I also didn't think that she was using it for the sake of having witnesses or having Rick be less conflicted about straight up murdering. Right? That didn't cross my mind.
Fair enough. That's just what I thought was going on.
Well, you're wrong.
We just talk about Breaking Bad. So meanwhile, while this storyline is going on,
let it go.
It'll never be over, Jim.
It's just you have the same problem Lost ended, dude. Let it
It's
go.
not over until we say
It's not over till I say it's over. So while this whole storyline is going on, where Rick and Carol are meeting up with the Reddest of Red Shirts, Daryl, Michonne, Bob, and Tyrese are still out on their mission. Remember, they got separated from their vehicle last week after they ran into a herd of 7,500 zombies. So we pick up with them. They're at a little creek, and Tyrese is washing the myriad zombie guts he got on his shirt, off of his shirt in the creek this time, and they're kind of trying to tell him that he needs to hurry up and come along with them. But it's clear right from the get-go that even though Tyrese fought through that horde of zombies to get to them at the end of last week's episode, he's still not quite all there. He's still very distant.
I'll say right now that I was more on board with Tyrese this week. Last week I was irritated by kind of the shifts it made to get him to where he needs to be this week, but I do think that while he's still making brash decisions that could easily get people killed, and that's not a good thing, I think that for the purposes of convincing drama on the show, it made sense for his actions that took place this week based on the setup, while clunky, that I got last week. So I think Chad Coleman's performance as Tyrese in this episode, I think it paid off for the most part.
I think I'd agree with that. So they eventually get to an auto shop because they're looking for a new car, and this auto shop is just completely overgrown with vines and weeds and such, and so they start cutting away brush from the front door, and Tyrese is just going at a whole hog, and they keep telling him, calm down, man, you're going to tire yourself out. You're hacking away at the vines, and he accidentally severs some wires that are holding the door shut underneath the vines, and that opens the door behind the vines and lets a group of walkers out, and it's kind of a cool scene. It's the walker hands and heads coming out from this very thick underbrush and grabbing our survivors who have to fight their way free from a small number of zombies, but still zombies they just were not expecting.
I like the set design in this area. I mean, if you guys saw The Talking Dead, they kind of went and talked a little bit about how they did it, and they made a point of saying it's been about a year and a half since the zombie outbreak, and that when they kind of venture out, they're going to have to start showing things being a little more overgrown, nature taking over, that kind of thing. So I thought it was kind of cool that we're seeing an area, and they actually use plants that are native to that area that I think they called it kudzu, which is some sort of a viney weed basically. And so I thought that was a nice touch, and again adds to kind of the believability of things that'll be overgrown and just one more obstacle that people have to contend with and to deal with.
I agree with you. I think it used reality as a convincing set piece. It has what would happen in this kind of scenario where it's been a while and so you have an overgrowth of plant life and what have you, and it sets up a tension-ridden set piece where you have zombie arms and faces coming out of plants all of a sudden. It was a cool idea, and I think it paid off well. I also got a big vibe from The Last of Us, the video game that came out this past year. That it's kind of set in this sort of post-apocalyptic world as well. It has this kind of overgrown feeling because the world is essentially ended, and that was a vibe I kept sensing throughout this plotline involving the Daryl's dream teams as they go into different areas of encountering overgrown plant life, what have you.
And scavenging supplies as they go, which is another part of that game.
Absolutely, and it also reminded me again of Day of the Dead, the scene early on in the movie. I think if I remember correctly, the nightmare that the main character has, where the zombie arms are coming out of the walls to grab her.
Yeah.
And it reminded me a lot of that visually. So Michonne, after they get themselves free from the walker, she's questioning Tyrese on what he was trying to do, and she's saying, you're running completely on anger at this point, and anger makes you do stupid things, and you need to just kind of push through it and move on. And Tyrese comes back at her and says, well, you still keep going out and hunting for the governor, and you can't find him anywhere, so why aren't you moving past your anger? And she eventually comes to the realization that she doesn't really have a good answer. She says she's not angry anymore, but then when he asks her, so why are you still out there looking for him, she's got nothing. She can't think of any reason.
Yeah, I really like that interaction. Again, we're starting to see more of Michonne as a character instead of she who scowls. So I always like that. And just the fact that it was, she said, I don't know. Instead of them trying to find some exposition or for her to go into some long-winded excuse or to make something up. I mean, it was pretty realistic for her to just say, I don't know. Basically, she was just kind of going with her gut and felt like it was the right thing to do, and that's what she should be doing. And I think it was kind of that realization that leads her to make the decision she makes later in the episode.
She also made a joke earlier.
Yeah.
And had smiled like the world's goofiest smile at Daryl.
I'm telling you, those two can make a spin-off cop show that I'd love to watch.
I get the feeling, though, that she has feelings for him that he's either blind to, much in the same way that he seemed very blind towards a lot of Carol's affections early on in the show, or that he's just chosen to ignore.
I mean, I don't need to like ship him. I think it just seems like Michonne has a certain attitude that she feels is comparable to Daryl, which is why she can interact with him in a certain way as opposed to other characters. She sees him as a person that knows how to be on his own and can probably make it himself, but has chosen to be with the group anyway. And I think she sees a lot of herself in Daryl to an extent.
I think she'd like to see a lot of Daryl in herself.
But she's also like suffered a loss of Andrea, a close friend of hers, for a better part of the year, and Daryl has just lost his brother. I mean, I think there's just a lot of similarities between the two characters that kind of lend themselves to being natural allies or natural friends or having a deeper relationship, regardless of if it's romantic or not.
Well,
fair enough. That makes
and
sense.
I think we kind of said the same thing about
Rick and
Michonne and Rick in the pilot episode, that they were kind of being friendly with each other, her more so than him, but there seemed to be a little more friendly banter between the two of them, almost kind of a little flirtatious between the two of them. And I think Daryl's just, because of his past or his upbringing or whatever, just seems kind of oblivious to that stuff in general, or he's just so focused that he just doesn't give it any mind. So it'll be interesting. And maybe it's just Michonne is just kind of socially awkward, and that's just the only way she knows to be friendly.
And I would buy that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I remember that awkward joke she had when she brought out like that random ceramic thing with Carl, which is I just had to save this thing. It's like, what? Like this weird like elephant thing, right? It's just like she obviously has a sense of humor. Right? It's just it's clearly breaking through now that she's being more accepting of having other people in her life. So it's just and we only know her as the girl, the one that scowls. So it's like, okay, I like seeing things break through, and sometimes it works better than others.
We also, speaking of Daryl, have a scene with him and Bob where Bob comes clean to Daryl about his alcoholism and that he feels guilty about Zach's death in the big spot in the season premiere because he feels that he put the bottle of alcohol back down on the shelf too hard, and that's what caused all the zombies to descend on them and eventually kill Zach. And Daryl, in colorful terms, basically tells him that's nonsense, and you can't take it upon yourself so harshly.
Hogwash, dear man. Poppycock. Pshaw. That's how he said it.
And they also fix one of the vehicles nearby by putting distilled water into the battery. A handy skill to know.
Another great scene too between there's just a lot of great coupling scenes, if I'll call it that way. A lot of good one-on-one interaction between these characters, and the writing. And we'll probably get to this more when we talk ratings, but I thought the writing in this episode, it was spectacular. I mean, as much as I took issue with the writing per se in the previous issue, I think this one made up for it tenfold. I mean, it just the character interactions, the speeches, the way they handled everything. Like, I didn't have an eye roll moment once. I didn't have anything that just made me shake my head at all. I mean, nothing's perfect, and there are a couple things I pointed out earlier that kind of had me scratch my head a little bit, but there was nothing really that took me out of this at all. And it just like we just went from one scene to the next, and they're pretty close to home runs. Every time that you had two characters on screen talking to each other.
I can say I agree, and I would have almost had an eye roll moment when Bob announces his alcoholism to Daryl, only to have it come up conveniently within the rest of the episode. But because Daryl does one of what I think is the most badass thing Daryl's ever done on the show, it didn't really make him on, so we'll get to that later on.
So we cut back over to the other story of the episode, which is Rick and Carol, and as they're scouring the neighborhood for food and medical supplies, Rick questions her about her actions with Karen and David finally, just to see what her feelings about it were, and Carol seems very strong and unwavering about what she's done, and Rick is very upset with her lack of emotion about the whole thing. And Carol questions Rick on his leadership, and she basically says, look, you can be a farmer if you want, but you can't be just a farmer, not in this world that we live in anymore. You have to be willing to step up and do things when they need to be done. And when it comes to protecting people, Rick says, he never killed any of his own people. Carol brings up Shane. Rick says it was all self-defense. Shane attacked him first. And they go about this for a while until they find some tomatoes that seem to be rather recently planted. I may just be biased because I live near farms and everything, so I know what tomatoes plants look like, and that they're tied to stakes and stuff that wouldn't be there a year later. Anyway, the point is they have a very kind of amusing off-key is the wrong term, but just kind of non-sequitur discussion about Lori, of all people, and how she used to make terrible pancakes every week for the family to eat on Sunday mornings.
As if we needed more fodder for why we can't like Lori even after she's died.
She's a crappy cook.
I thought it was kind of a cute discussion, though.
Dude, pancakes. I know what you mean. I did like the I like this whole kind of. I mean, I like this plotline in general. I like the whole Rick Carol plotline, just all the different aspects of it. I like them having this kind of discussion about their past lives and how Rick talks about loss is to him, and as opposed to Carol. Carol, she says she's basically blocking out what's happened, and not blocking out, but she's not referencing things in her life. Rick mentions like why don't you say her name. She's specifically not saying Sophia. She's specifically not saying Ed. She mentions these things in kind of a weird context, but she's obviously, as we've kind of discussed in the past, she's become hardened to these things. She's moved on. That's her way of kind of coping with these issues. While Rick still very much has Lori in mind and has these kind of his past actions. He hasn't blocked them out in an effort to keep himself moving. He's kind of embracing everything in order to keep himself going to an extent. And so I like it. I like the kind of yin and yangs going on here, and them having conversations that seem like actual conversations people would have in these kind of dire scenarios.
Which is a very novel idea, unfortunately, on the show.
Yeah.
in many times.
But yeah, it is an interesting dichotomy, where Rick is embracing his present and his past and tries not to lose sight of it. And then we have Carol, who is doing everything she can to forget it and move on and be stronger. And it's funny because Carol has changed so much that you almost forget that Sophia was her daughter, and I'm not saying that as a negative criticism, but just, again, I think a credit to what they've done with her character, where they've taken it in the writing, that, that she's messed up in a much different way than she was messed up in the comics.
Yes.
I mean, she's diverged. I mean, a completely different character, which is fine. But I think she's damaged in both timelines, per se, but in just much different ways.
She's infused with a lot of she's infused with a lot of comic Andrea with a mixture of other elements as well.
Sure,
That's
sure.
seeing it with Carol.
That's one of the points I was going to make, is it seems like she's taking kind of Andrea's role from the comic in some ways. But isn't there a point where she kind of denies Sophia?
Well,
she's talking to the new kids. Like she says, 2 daughters, but she's referring to Lizzie and the other
It's
girl.
complicated because they ask her, I think what the specific question was they mentioned that people are sick at the prison, and I think they specifically asked her if any of her kids are sick, and she says no. But then Rick gives her a funny look, and eventually she goes, well, there's these 2 girls I'm taking care of, and one of them's sick. But I feel like people are saying she was denying that she had children, i.e. Sophia, there. But I didn't feel like that was the case. It was more just she was asked a specific question, and she answered it truthfully. Even if, many people might have gone, oh, the girl I'm watching is sick, or I did have a daughter, but she's not sick, or something. It just felt like she was being very direct and to the point to me, not that she was denying anything.
I agree. I mean, there's a context to apply to this kind of questioning, but there's also, I mean, earlier on when Lizzie calls Carol mom, she quickly tells her, "Don't call me mom." Like, and it certainly sets up her state of mind and what she has going on with her in regards to who I am right now as opposed to who I used to be.
Yeah, and it wasn't even "Don't call me that." I think, and then Lizzie apologizes and she says, "Well, don't let it happen again, or don't do that again." Like it wasn't even just once that she said, she said it and then reinforced it.
Right, she emphasized it.
So they're walking through the neighborhood after they find the tomatoes, and I believe at that point they mentioned Sam and Anna, and they should probably go meet up with them. And that's when they open a gate and find Anna's severed leg, which you can immediately recognize because she has a conveniently placed tribal-ish tattoo on the calf.
Unless you're my friend Scooter, who was like, "Who's that?" And I was like, "Come on, what are you doing?"
The one person with a tattoo that we specifically spotlighted in this episode. Although at least they found a way to not spotlight the tattoo directly. They were spotlighting the fact that she had a messed up leg, and it just happened to show the tattoo, which I appreciated because it wasn't as on the nose as it could have been. But then in the background of the scene of the shot, a good use of three-dimensional space, I thought Anna is being devoured by a couple of zombies, and Rick and Carol figure, well, guess it's time to get out of here and go see if Sam shows up. Otherwise, we're leaving. And interesting thought, I've seen a couple people bring this up since the episode, but if you take a good look at that leg, it does not look like it was ripped off by zombies. It looks like it was sawed off. It's almost a flat break in that leg. Do you think the governor found her or other people? Is there something else going on here? We never see Sam again, but something in retrospect seemed very off. And not off in a, oh, they did that in a dumb way kind of way, but off in a, there's something else going on here type of way.
I'll be happy to grow on this later on if it does turn out to be something more than what's in front of me. But for the time being, I'm very content with just saying zombies got her. I mean, that's all I think. I don't think this scene has any other heavier implications that could go on to lead into governor or anybody else.
Yeah, I agree.
Fair enough. I still say that leg break seemed way too clean, but
Budget.
but budget on their props like that has never really been a big problem for The Walking Dead. They generally
It's not like they showed you like a full 360 view of the leg either. You got a leg. You didn't see like how it was ripped off. You just saw kind of a flat leg laying on the ground.
Somebody shot it too wide.
So they go back to the house and they wait for Sam, but he does not show up, and Rick wants to wait longer, but Carol says it's time for us to leave. And at that point, we cut back to Daryl. So Daryl and the others, they get to the veterinary college, they're looking for supplies, they get into a big laboratory-type room, and like you said earlier, very reminiscent of The Last of Us. There's a set piece in that game that's very similar to this veterinary hospital, or veterinary college. I think it might have even, was it a veterinary college in the game, or just a college that had like a veterinary wing?
I think that's what it was, yes.
But very, very similar setup, and use of very creepy effects in both places. So they're all grabbing different things that they're going to need, and Bob notices a stack of books and some other things in the corner on a cot, and he goes over and looks at that. Michonne looks at him a little suspiciously, and the group goes around getting all their medical supplies. Bob tells them anything that ends in sin or Cillin is the stuff we need, and they start popping it in their backpacks and duffel bags and such as they work their way through the building.
So it kind of implies that Bob has some, I hate to say medical training because
But they say in the first episode of the season that he was an army medic or a National Guard medic or something like that.
He was, an army medic, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes. And I believe in the comics as well, he also was functioning as a doctor of some type.
Did anyone else think that? I mean, I figured it was Booze just because, like, why would they linger on the shot so much? But I didn't really see Booze at all on the screen. I always saw it with the books. And
I freeze framed it, and you can see the neck of the bottle sticking out from under the books.
Okay.
And it's the same bottle. It's not even like just a bottle. It's definitely the same one because it's got that same wrapper around the neck.
I know, I figured. And, like, I mean, the show makes it very obvious. So it's not like I ever suspected anything but Bottle. But it's like I watched it a few times and I never paused it or anything. I just kind of looked. I was like, all right, he's staring at something. But I never really thought Booze. I never visually saw Booze. I just kind of like assumed Booze. But it seemed like they're emphasizing books. I could really have.
He's a big reader.
Yeah.
So they are making their way through the halls. They find a group of walkers inside of it seemed like to be a room that had been converted to a living space. So people have been living there, and you can quickly see from these walkers that they had also come down with the 1918 flu that everybody seems to have. They got the bloody eyes and everything. So they probably died just recently and in that room right there where they had been living. So the walkers start start following our survivors as they try to make their way out of the building. They can't shoot these walkers or get too close to them because then they might catch that flu from the walkers, and that would be very dangerous. So they're doing their best to stay as far away from them as possible, as well as get out of the building. They eventually make their way out of the building onto some type of raised overhang type thing that's above the zombies by about a floor. And Bob almost drops his bag. His bag goes over the side. He grabs it, and a bunch of walkers also grab it. They have a tug of war. The others tell him, just let go. He won't do it. They eventually pull him back over the side, and he's able to rescue the bag. And when they look inside, surprise, surprise, there's the bottle of alcohol. And apparently no medicine, although I could have sworn I saw him putting medicine also in the bag, but they make a point to say he grabbed this and not medicine.
Which is a little meh.
Which is odd. Like, I mean, I like this episode a lot. I'll buy almost anything in the episode. But why in the world would he only grab alcohol? Even if he's a raging alcoholic. It's not like he had found 10 bottles and only filled his bag with bottles. He grabbed one bottle and no medicine whatsoever, apparently.
Yeah, I thought sure in the earlier scene he had, but I mean later when they go through the bag or whatever, obviously the point's made that he hadn't. So.
It was just another big example of the episode's theme that did hammer quite hard with letting things go. And so
why do you have that impression, Aaron? Is it because they said the phrase "let go" about 30 times in the episode?
Yeah.
Sort of like how the theme of this episode is Breaking Bad.
Exactly, just like that.
So they have a bit of a scuffle, not really a scuffle, but they start yelling at Bob. Bob puts his hand to his side and starts to unlatch his gun, and Daryl does not take kindly to that gesture. He comes up to Bob and he puffs out his chest, and I guess the term would be fronts, although front to me seems like you don't have anything to back it up, and clearly Daryl does, but he chest bumps Bob quite hard and lets him know in no uncertain terms, you take a swig from that bottle before everybody back at the prison gets their medicine, and I will straight up murder you myself because you done screwed up there, son.
This scene was amazing to me. Now,
Yes.
like, it already... Yes, Bob establishes I'm an alcoholic, by the way, Daryl. I hope that doesn't harm our friendship in the rest of this episode, only to have it happen. And that's like whatever. But if that brings me to the scene where I get to see Daryl, I get to see so personally. Daryl nearly throws away the bottle. Bob puts his hand in his gun and says, "Don't do that." And then Daryl without like a blink just walks up to Bob, puts his forehead against Bob's forehead, and just kind of looks at him. He gives him this hardcore look, and it just like thrilled me that this was happening right now. Daryl was such a badass in this moment that just made me so happy with like what we know about Daryl, what we know about Bob, what we know about these characters, and how this scene is playing out right now, just from kind of visual communication of what I can do to you if you draw a gun on me. Like it was just such a cool moment for it, and adding to what already been a great season for Daryl, who's largely been in the background, just serving as kind of the guy that can get things done. But it paid off like tremendously here, where he gets to show a very good example of how effective he can be, and not only taking out walkers but keeping the group in line.
He was almost daring him. It's like, I dare you to pull because I will drop you like a bag of hot rocks.
Say what again?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And with his bare hands, not even like if he grabs that gun, Daryl's gonna beat him to death.
Well, I felt like Daryl would have just expanded his chest even more and pushed Bob directly off that overhang. I don't think he would have had to hit him.
Yeah.
Daryl was exuding power in that scene. I think it's the most badass he's been in the entire show, and that's saying something.
Yeah.
Good week with the Vixens.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So we then cut back to the neighborhood with Rick and Carol, and Carol goes to get into the Hyundai and finds the door locked, and she looks over at Rick and he tells her, Karen and David might have lived, and you killed them anyway. You took a risk, but you had no reason to think that what you did would work. You had no reason to think that they would necessarily die and come back and attack us. You straight up murdered them. And he says, look, I can deal with this on my own. I'm not judging you, but I'm not going to keep it from the group when we get back. I'm going to be honest. I'm going to tell Tyrese and tell everybody what happened. And if you come back with me, Tyrese is going to straight up murder you. The others in the group might agree with that decision. They might not agree with that decision. We might have a whole civil war going on in prison over whether or not what you did was right. Or basically, are you willing to risk that by coming back with me? He doesn't necessarily tell her you cannot come back with me, but he makes it very clear that he does not support that decision of her coming back with him.
I was very torn with this because I agree with Rick in the sense that it would have torn everything apart because half of everybody would have been maybe not okay with it, but understood it and could rationalize it. And the other half would have been Tyrese's camp, which is, no, you need to die or you need to move on. You don't have to go home. You can't stay here. And so it was just a really thought-provoking kind of moment, where you start thinking to yourself, like, what side of the fence do you fall on? Like, if you were in this situation, how would you feel? Would you, feel sympathy for Carol and understand where she's coming from, or would you, think along Rick's lines and that, this can't go on? I don't trust you anymore with my, around my children. I don't trust, that basically what you've done is going to drive such a wedge between everyone that it's going to destroy everything we've fought so long and hard for to establish at that prison.
It really brought me closer to like what the Walking Dead game has to offer, where it gives you options of how you play the story, and the options aren't always clear. There's not always a right answer, and that's something I think this arc really emphasized a lot. Not like banishing Carol from the prison or taking her back. Like either of those could yield different results, but you're not quite sure of which one is exactly the right call. I may have an opinion on which one I think is more effective, but I like the fact that this episode kind of challenges the viewer to accept what Rick's laying out there and consider if he's right or wrong. And I think that's the mark of a well-written episode, a well-written storyline.
Well, we talked about it a bit last week, but I really like that scene with Herschel where he comes into the scene, he has that confrontation with Rick and Maggie, and I'm watching the scene fully on Rick's side, and then Herschel makes his case, and I went, you know what? You just swayed me, and that's rare, but your argument swayed me over to your side. That's awesome. That was a really effective scene. It was short, it was effective, and I really appreciate it. This week, and if we go back further, you had scenes with Dale and stuff that weren't as effective, or Shane that weren't as effective, where someone's making their case and it just doesn't work. In this episode, I was kind of in the middle on who I agree with more. I think Aaron, you said the same thing. Like I was a little bit more on Rick's side than Carol's side going into it, but not like, full bore. And by the end of the episode, I wasn't fully on either side either. But the point is, what I appreciated was that Carol's argument didn't immediately make me go, that's nonsense, and now I'm fully on Rick's side. And in previous seasons and episodes of the show, we've had those scenes with Dale or with Andrea or with Shane where you go into the scene and most people are probably already going to be falling on one side of the argument, and then you have your two characters giving their sides of the argument, and one of them is clearly right and makes total sense, and the other one is just nonsense. And it feels like the writers were doing their best in many of those cases to make the lesser argument, if you will, have some weight so it made sense, but it just didn't work. And in both these cases, last week in this case, where we're given two alternate and opposing arguments, they've been equally effective. And it's hard to do that because most people have preconceived notions on what they believe about things. It's hard to sway them or to give good arguments for both sides. That sides isn't going to make the person watching it go, oh, one of those arguments is nonsense, and I buy the other one. And in both these cases, they did a really good job, and that makes me super happy for the show because they haven't been able to do that very well in the past. And now 2 episodes in a row, awesome.
What also helps is that oftentimes these episodes that focus on like one character who's all of a sudden delving information out about themselves usually results in like their death or what have you. But this episode, you flesh out Carol more, and we already we have a good bit of information about Carol to begin with. We know who she is, we know who she was, but we still get to learn more about who she is and who she was, and it pays off in this episode. I think you get a very good perspective on who this person is, but it also doesn't end with them not being part of the show anymore because of it, and that's a trap that the show's run into before. And I like that it leaves it open ended for what's going to happen with Carol. Will she return in the season? I assume so. I don't know what capacity, but I very much doubt that this is the last we see of Carol for some time. I feel like she can come back as easy as 2 weeks from now. If she doesn't, that's great. Whatever, we'll see. I'm curious to see where the story's going to take it, but I do like that. We're going to see her again, and I'll be curious in what capacity. I'm also curious as to what the show's going to do without her, knowing given that like Tyrese is still questioning what happened with Karen and David, what Daryl's going to think, what the rest of the group's going to think. There's a lot of options to consider now that this event has occurred.
Carol's going to move to Montana, and that's our spin-off show.
Carol's going to end up being the new Merle for the governor.
I completely agree, actually. I think she is going to end up taking the role of Karen in the comics, which is interesting since she straight up murdered Carol. Karen, rather. I think she's going to take Karen's role from the comic, and then eventually, and I know this is very spoilery if you know what I'm talking about, otherwise it doesn't make any sense, but eventually she'll end up taking Tyrese's role in the comic. And for those of you who know what I mean, when I say Tyrese's role in the comic, when it relates to the governor, I think that would kind of make sense, just in terms of the direction her character has been going.
That's a plausible scenario. I wouldn't say I think that's what's going to happen, but I can see that as an option.
There is a little bit more to the episode, though. Like we said, they're having this discussion, and like I said, Rick says he's not going to kick her out of the prison himself, but he does say, if the prison fell apart and it's just me and my son and daughter and you, I'm not letting you stay with that group, because that group of me and my children, I cannot trust you with them. And she eventually says, okay, but at least let me take Mika and Lizzie with me. And he says, he can't allow her to do that. And he says, you'll be able to survive on your own. You're strong, and that's what you're going to have to do. So they load up their supplies. Rick puts some supplies in the other car, the station wagon for Carol. She gives Rick her pocket watch, or wristwatch that was kind of broken. That was a present from Ed originally, and she gives it to him. And she says, she should have given it away a long time ago. Rick watches Carol pull out and drive away around the cul-de-sac, which I thought was interesting. I mean, cul-de-sacs are almost completely illogical now. Why would you still use them in the post-apocalypse? But whatever. And then Rick drives away down the road, kind of unsure about what he's done, and he keeps looking over his shoulder, not over his shoulder directly, but into the rearview mirror, looking at where he had just come from, as he heads back to the prison, and Daryl and the others make their way back to the prison as well.
I got a big Empire Strikes Back vibe from this ending because the episode ends in a kind of somber note where our heroes had accomplished a goal to an extent, and there's still action to happen later on in terms of what's going to happen with this plague and whatnot. But we end on kind of a down note despite moving towards the next part of the adventure, and it works. Like it fits. Like it feels like a closed out episode. As we established that it does feel like Clear or 18 Miles, where you had kind of singled out episode of, that's my Chris Hardwick joke.
Yeah.
Where you have just a focus on certain characters this time around.
The other thing with this episode is there has to be some consequence for Rick. Whether anybody thinks he did the right thing or not, he acted on his own. And I think a lot of people are going to see that was his purpose in taking her in the first place. And I think Rick knows that too. I think he did that knowing that there's going to be some consequence for him. And I think he was okay with that, because I think he pretty much came to the realization that if you're going to stay at the prison, then me and my children cannot stay at the prison. Like I don't trust you anymore, because you're to the point where if you feel like something needs to be done for the greater good, then you're going to act on it. Which I think maybe Rick sees a little of himself in that too, because I fully believe if it came down to anybody, or Judith or Carl, that he wouldn't hesitate to make the same type of decision that Carol made, regardless of what anybody else thought. So, and I think it showed too, because he didn't really have a lot of malice in his decision. It wasn't like he was upset or mad or enraged or anything like that. It was very matter of fact, and it was just like, look, you may think you did the right thing, and basically only you can make peace with that. But because of what you did, you cannot be around me and the children, and you can't cause this strife for the group. And so you did what you did, knowing that there was going to be a consequence, and this is what it is. And I think, like I said, I think Rick, there has to be some consequence for Rick. I mean, if he comes back and everybody is completely fine with this, then I'm going to have a real problem with the show. And I don't think there's anything to lead me to believe that's going to happen. But I'm really curious to see how this gets played out, because I do not believe for a second that Rick is going to lie to the group and say, oh, she's dead or she was taken or anything like that.
Oh, for sure. I think the first thing he does when they come back is to explain exactly what happened. And I know it's going to piss off Tyrese, it's going to piss off Daryl, and it's going to piss off the council, and maybe they'll have some kind of ritual they do with the scenario. But I mean, it's
maybe that's when the rope's in the gallows.
That's finally, we'll finally our council fill. But yeah, it really lends itself to more drama in a season that already has a plague, a missing governor, and zombies just outside of gates that are being fed by somebody that we have no idea about. So I mean, there's plenty to add on here. And yes, I am curious as to what this action's going to do to the other characters, how it's going to play out with the other characters.
Well, before we give our Buster ratings for the episode, Russ, who is our sponsor for this week?
Our sponsor for this week's episode of the Walking Dead TV podcast is Discount Comic Book Service. That's DCBService.com, where you can save a ton of money on your comics, graphic novels, and various tchotchkes that are geek related. There's all kinds of cool stuff at DCBService.com or InStockTrades.com. And as we mentioned in the past, DCBS recently acquired the website Tales of Wonder, and so they are working on order fulfillment for Tales of Wonder as well, and it's been going pretty smoothly there. So they've also added some clearance books that you can find on the sites. Some books as low as 70 cents a piece. So really cool stuff. Some of them also, some highlights for this month of November for Discount Comic Book Service. J. Michael Straczynski, if you're familiar with him from Babylon 5, big time comic book writer J. Michael Straczynski, he is kicking off a new Twilight Zone series. So Twilight Zone #1 from J. Michael Straczynski is 50% off this month, making it only $1.99. Bunch of bundles this month too. All new Marvel Now, which is the second round of Marvel Now titles. Single issue bundles, you can get them for 50% off for $31.42 for that whole bundle, which is a really good deal. Vertigo, the DC imprint Vertigo first single issue bundles at 50% off for a total of $10.96. So really good price there. Again, if you're not into the physical books, you can go to DCBService.com, use their Comixology portal, and earn 5% back on your purchases. So again, if you're saving up for that Walking Dead trade or hardcover or omnibus or whatever, and you like the digital side of things, but occasionally like your print, you can order up on the digital side and apply that 5% off to a print volume at some point through DCB Service. On the Walking Dead side, tons of stuff this month. Again, t-shirts, all kinds of little knickknacks and stuff, as well as the first bi-weekly issues coming out. Walking Dead 119 and 120 are both solicited for November at 40% off, so you can get them for $179 off the regular cover price of $299. And if you haven't ordered from DCB Service in a year, or it's your first time ordering, you can use the code WD8 and get an extra 8% off your order. So we thank them for their support of the Walking Dead TV podcast.
Absolutely. It's a great deal. Gentlemen, what are your Buster ratings for this week's episode?
I'm going to go 4.5 Busters. I really like this episode. I think it was definitely one of the stronger writing episodes. It seems like the show sometimes can excel on the action and the tension side of things, and it can excel in the character drama side of things. And I think this episode was definitely excelling on the character interaction and just the overall writing. Like I mentioned before, I didn't really have any eye-rolling moments. I had a couple things that were maybe just a little clunky in my mind, but nothing that stood out to me, and just a lot of gold in this episode of character interactions and where things are going. And I think, like we talked about at the beginning, the focus of this episode, I tend to like when they do these focus episodes where we kind of got the two storyline, but again, a pretty tight set of characters and a tight storyline overall. So I was really impressed with this week.
Yeah, I give it 4.5 as well. I think it's the best episode of the season so far. I agree with all the points that Russ just made. I do think Melissa McBride has done a great job this season, despite my misgivings about kind of the setup of her plotline and some of the previous episodes. I think she really delivered this time out for sure, as well as Angelina. I think those two had a great storyline this week. And on the other side of things with the Daryl's Dream Team stuff, we've already mentioned that Daryl had just a great badass moment, but in general, I liked how that's how the story played out. It had some of the action stuff as well that kind of get you going in the movie, watching a zombie show, but also had like legit drama going on. So I really like this episode quite a bit.
I also, I guess I'll make it a hat trick. I will give it 4.5 out of 5. And I'll tell you why. Aaron makes a really good point. It's probably the strongest episode of the season. What I come to this show to find are great zombie action moments and really good character moments and character-defining dialogue. And this episode had all of that. It had some really great zombie kills, some great action. It also had some really great character interaction, which was what obviously keeps people coming back to the story in both the comic and the TV form. I just thought some of the dialogue here really sounded some of the best dialogue I've heard this season for sure. And the whole resolution at the end with Carol, I was kind of. It was like I was waiting for the shoe to drop for the whole episode. Whether was Rick going to kill Carol, is he going to abandon her, is he going to death by zombie, is he going to be like Otis all over again? It's just those kind of things kept going through my mind through the whole episode. So it really kept me guessing. I thought it was really strong. Really enjoyed it a lot. 4.5 out of 5.
Well, I'll make it the whatever a hat trick plus 1 would be considered. That's some kind of turkey or something. I don't know. For bowling. I know that's also 3 strikes. But anyway,
we'll hit for the cycle.
We're hit for the cycle. Okay.
A fedora.
A wide-brimmed hat trick.
Yay, sports ball.
Make the point. Score all the points. That's a great video. Anyway, also connected to Chris Hardwick in another way because it's from Web Soup. But anyway, I'll make it the hat trick plus 1, 4.5. A few minor pacing issues I didn't fully buy, and also some of the stuff with Bob. Like I said, and like you guys have already said, Daryl's half of those conversations, his reactions to them were awesome. But when you give me a scenario like Bob picking up the bottle of alcohol and no drugs whatsoever to help the rest of his group, I just can't fathom how any person would do something like that. So it bothers me in a way that normally I can make up an excuse for. Oh, well, this character would do X strange thing because of A, B, and C. I can't come up with a good explanation for why he would do that in the way that it was presented in the show. So those couple minor things, but otherwise I really did enjoy this episode. Jim, what did our listeners think over there on the Facebook group, our ever active and buzzing and bumping Facebook group, which is so much fun?
If you're a fan of the Walking Dead TV show, then you should definitely join our Facebook group, the Walking Dead TV podcast Facebook group, because there are a lot of cool discussions that go on and news as we find it is posted there, cool diversions and things like that. For the Buster ratings for this week, everybody seemed to be pretty favorable. 4 out of 5 shameful whiskey shots from Ian Timms. 4 out of 5 Zombie the Hedgehogs from Michael Santana. We're in good hands with Scott Gimple. He says very satisfied with the show at this point. Hezron Mack, 4 Busters out of 5, not buying the rationale for the killings for Carol. Carol's rationale for the killings. Donnie Salvo, 3.5 for me. 4.25 hipster zombie bait out of 5 from Everard Santa Maria. I'm not sure how I feel about banishing Carol, but it's a justifiable decision. I'll be unilateral from Rick. Mike Jones, 4.5 characters drinking and smoking out of 5. 3 Tyrese needs go out of 5. Linda Clark Ake says, I'm crushed to see Carol go, and this seems so out of left field to me. The whole Carol murdering 2 people thing. Mike Jones reposted that there's zero chance the Carol story is over, and I agree. Brad Milo, who unfortunately his computer is having some strange demons in it and could not join us tonight, sounds off that voting Carol off the island was ballsy. My head's still kind of spinning from that. Actually, I'm surprised she didn't put up more of a fight. Comic book Tyrese is much cooler than television Tyrese. I've been saying that since they introduced him, Brad. He gives it 4 busters out of 5. 4.25 out of 5 for Sarah Ann Howard. I like this episode much more than last week. I think Rick's decision makes sense for where he is right now. He's back in the strong Rick camp. John Hefford, 3 out of 5. There are a number of eye roll moments for me. I'm beginning to think Breaking Bad ruined the season for me. Well, I mean, that's kind of comparing apples to oranges, if you ask me. Robert Negro gave it 4 scavenged apricots out of 5. Carol deserves some talking to, but did not deserve that. Max Hill for 4.5 dislocated shoulders out of 5. I always marvel at all the different rating systems that everyone uses. Luke Smith FX, great episode. Hopefully not the end of Carol, 4 out of 5. Christopher Levine, 4.5 out of 5. Holding hands, Kumbaya style. I liked it. I like the one-on-one type episodes. Out of Itagi, a good 4 out of 5 supply runs. 4 out of 5 Bob's Bottles from Leo Cavalli and New Night, 4.25 out of 5 retro hippie couples. At long last, a trend of character development. So, like I said, if you want to join the discussion and the fun and get into all the cool news and fun that we share in the group, it's the Walking Dead TV Podcast Facebook group.
So I think we've all kind of hinted at it, but let's put our bets out now. How soon till we see Carol again? Mid-season finale, next half of the season, next season? Do we not see her till the spin-off show? My bet, I say the strong money is on see her by the mid-season finale.
I agree.
At the soonest.
We're going to see the governor balloon up to about 800 or 900 pounds laying on a barge, and he's going to have Carol at the end of a chain in a brass bikini. He's no Jedi.
And Russ, we mentioned it earlier, but I believe we also have a voicemail for this episode.
We have 2 this week.
Woohoo! And is our voicemail number back up and running?
It's not back up and running yet,
Okay.
but it will be very, very shortly.
So if anybody wants to send us a voicemail, they can record an MP3, and they can email it to us at comments@walkingdeadtv.com, and the actual fake landline should be up again soon.
Here we go.
Hey guys, this is Brett from Boston. It's been well over a year since I checked in with you because, frankly, Season 3 was a bit of a letdown for me, and I didn't really have the motivation to call in. But now we're 4 episodes into Season 4, and I'm so satisfied with the way the show is going that I just had to send you a message and share my thoughts. Let's be honest, as fans of the comic, this is what we've been waiting for since the show first aired, right? I mean, each episode is a self-contained microplot with a beginning, middle, and end, just like the comic, and they just never really managed to pull that off, with a few notable exceptions in the first 3 seasons. Almost every major character has an interesting plot line of their own, and they're having interesting and, more importantly, believable dialogue with their fellow survivors. And the danger is more believable, the threats are more tangible, the dialogue is more often than not well-written and well-delivered, and I really feel like the show has turned a corner. And while it might be too early to get my hopes up, well, too bad. My hopes are officially up for Season 4. This last episode, Indifference, is really what did it for me. So we have 2 groups sort of independently acting. They can ping-pong between those 2 plot lines. And most importantly, we're away from the prison for a whole episode. And this is really the perfect timing for that. We have conflict resolution between Michonne and Daryl. There's an escalation of the tension with Bob Stuckey, and this clearing of the air between Rick and Carol. And speaking of Rick and Carol, the departure of Carol absolutely has to be the most ballsy move by the writing team since the beginning of the series. At least I feel so. I know it may not seem like much, but I think it's really significant. They took a fairly major character who's been around since Season 1. They gave her a pretty interesting character arc in the last couple episodes, and they somehow managed to remove her from the group, not by death, but through a very convincing and believable sort of falling out. And I totally did not see that coming, but it really felt so right. Suffice it to say, I'm really excited for what's coming next in the show. I had sort of lost faith there for a while in Season 3. I didn't think the governor plotline was handled well. I didn't think Andrea got a fair shake. There was a lot that could have been done better. But now in Season 4, Scott Gimple really seems to have a good head on his shoulders, and I think he's done what the other showrunners have failed to do, which is trust the original source material. No, he's not following it to the letter, but he's following it to the spirit. Each one of these Season 4 episodes to me has really felt like an issue of the comics, and that's all that we ever really wanted from the beginning. Well, that's all I got, guys. I'm a big fan of the show. Keep it up.
Thank you, Brett. And I wouldn't say that the comic always does, self-contained one-and-done stories, but it certainly has been able to pull them off better than the show has up until this point, where it seems to be starting to be able to do that. I think both have been able to do the long-form stuff pretty well, but it's nice to see the slightly more self-contained storylines with the overarching plot as well.
I would say the killing off of Rick's, of Laurie, presumably they set the co-lead on the show at that point seemed like a pretty ballsy move as well. But I get what he's trying to say for sure. I appreciate a lot of his thoughts. I think he made a lot of good points in his message.
Yeah, I definitely wasn't as down on Season 3 as maybe he was, and I understand that the show kind of got that criticism, especially from the hardcores, in the last couple seasons, but I definitely think this is an uptick, and like I said earlier in the episode, I think a lot of that revolves around the writing. I think for whatever reason, maybe it's Scott Gimple having that writing background, taking the reins on the show. It just seems like the writing for me has just taken a serious uptick this season, and I have no reason to believe that moving forward, it's not going to be the same way.
I think we've kind of reached the Goldilocks zone too, as far as people were thinking that the Darabont run as showrunner might have been a little too slow paced, and the Nicotero run might have been a little too fast paced with too much action. I think Gimple's kind of got it in the just right area, so I think that's why it's appealing to more people.
The Glenn Mazzara run.
Although, how awesome would a Nicotero run be?
Awesome.
Speaking of, I mean, I would be happy if Nicotero directed more. I mean, he just seems to have a really good eye for it. Although the negative side effect would be maybe that if he's behind the camera, he's not in the zombie shop as often, and so there might be some issues there. But a little bit of news before we got one more voicemail I'll play, but it just seems like a right time to mention this. And since Jordan, you're on the Breaking Bad tip this episode.
Wait, somebody said Breaking Bad? What?
Yeah. We found out, I guess, that Michelle MacLaren is going to be directing the season finale of Season 4 of The Walking Dead. So,
which is awesome. For anybody who doesn't know Michelle MacLaren, she's directed some of the best episodes of Breaking Bad, and she directed Walking Dead once or twice before, didn't she?
I believe so.
I believe so, yeah. But knowing her affinity for action-oriented episodes, I guess we could speculate at this point that there's going to be some fairly intense action going on, or at least some tension-filled moments going on in that finale, which makes sense. But I was happy to hear that she's going to be back behind the lens for some future episodes.
As am I.
She directed pretty much that already, the episode where Sophia was revealed to be in the barn.
Yes.
All right, let's play the second voicemail message. This one is from Mr. Brian Fuquay, who sent us voicemail last week. So let's hear what he has to say this week.
Hey guys, it's Brian Fuquay at Radio Fuquay on Twitter. Okay, so at the beginning of this season, showrunner Scott Gimple revealed there's going to be some kind of story arc over the first handful of episodes of Season 4. Now, I'm bringing that up because we've seen 3 episodes now in a row that all start with the letter I. And now it's revealed that there'll be one more called Internment, and it's going to be the final one. And will that be the end of the story arc he's referring to? Will we see some stuff resolved? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. But anyway, moving back to this episode, Indifference. Guys, I gotta say, this was my favorite episode of the season by far. I mean, it was huge. Dude, that opening scene where Carol's talking with Lizzie was just chilling. I can't remember the last time I've seen a child actor do this well before. Be this real. Brian Sorbino. Yeah, that's her name. Okay. She deserves a ton of praise for this. Like, my favorite part was like when she says to Carol that she's not afraid to kill, she's just afraid. To which Carol responds with, "You can't be." And then with the most soft, vulnerable flutter in her voice, because she's starting to break and tear up, Lizzie asks, "Why?" Dude, that was outstanding. I reminded and watched it over and over again. Jordan, I know you don't like kids. I know they know you, especially the ones in this season, but you've got to give her credit, and she totally deserves it.
Oh,
Anyway,
yeah,
moving on, I have signs written down in my notes. There was a stop sign that someone ran in this episode, which made me notice there were various shots of people floating all over the road, doing all sorts of stuff while they're driving. And I didn't know if that was an artistic decision by the director to put that in. Maybe the writers wanted to put it in to illustrate yet another nod of the title Indifference, that people are indifferent to the way they drive now. Maybe it's everything changes, even the way people drive. They're changing road rules. Maybe I'm reaching, but I just thought it was worth noticing. Okay, the Jasper Stone. I thought it was a cool thing to show the Jasper Stone with him being all nice and whatever, but they kept cutting back to that Jasper Stone. Like, am I missing something here? Like, they really wanted you to notice that thing. Like, or is it something that's going to be revealed in a future episode? I just wondering what you guys thought about that. Anyway, Carol's gone. Dude, like, Melissa McBride was just now in the opening credits instead of an also starring, and she's gone? What? I'm in disbelief. Like, I mean, obviously the character's going to make it. She's tough as nails now. But I'm just blown. What? Anyway, I know I'm going a little long this week, but I just wanted to wrap up with this, and that was Sam and Anna. Now, we see Anna's leg in that yard, and I think we're supposed to be led to believe that the zombies drug her away, and all we have left now is her leg. But that sever on that leg was way too clean to be
That's
zombie
what I said.
limb from limb type wound. Now, if it was any other kind of show, I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But the Walking Dead special effects and makeup team, they're acclaimed for their attention to detail. So this would be a pretty big mistake to have it look like that. I think they're above that. I think this was intentional. So was it foul play, or was it just bad luck for Anna? Anyway, I just thought it was worth bringing up. So thanks for the podcast. Look forward to hearing it. It's one of my favorites to listen to every week. And I guess I'll talk to you guys later. All right, bye.
Well, thank you for the voicemail, Brian, and thank you for backing me up on my whole that severed leg didn't look right theory. We'll see, of course. But yeah, I like the girl who plays Lizzie. I think she's doing a fine job, and I think I've been pretty consistent about that. I think the child acting, that first episode where there's like 4 or 5 kids standing around talking about the zombies, yeah, that was grating and annoying. But the two main girls, I've been just fine with.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't had any problem with the child acting on this show.
We kind of breezed past the Jasper Stone and Daryl, and you kind of brought that up as a point.
Yeah, what was in the plot, if I remember correctly, was he picks up the Jasper Stone off the ground, and him and Michonne are talking about it. That's where she has that really awkward smile towards him. But she asks him what's it for, and he mentions the name of somebody back at camp. Who I believe he said they wanted him to keep an eye out for Jasper Stone to use on a gravestone for their significant other, for their dead husband or their dead wife or something. And so that's what he was picking it up for. And she was surprised that he knew the names of everybody from Woodbury because there were so many people. And he makes the comment, "Hey, you spend a couple hours, making an effort to try to get to know people, and you'd be amazed what you can learn." And that kind of shuts her down a little bit after she gets in that big smile. But so Brian, being he, not Daryl, said they focused on it a lot. I don't know that I'd say they focused on it a lot in the episode. They pointed it out a few times, but maybe it's just there to symbolize human connection and actually taking the time to look for the humanity in somebody. I mean, we also see that idea, that theme referenced with Carol and Lizzie's discussion about the humanity of the zombies if it exists. We have it with the Carol and Rick discussions where they're discussing what was the humane thing to do with Karen and David. So I can see it being a visual metaphor for some of the other the emotional themes running through the show. But I didn't think it was overdone. I'm not saying that Brian said that either, but I think it was appropriately used.
What I took away from that is that Daryl, I mean, they brought up the thing early on, Michonne made a joke, and what you're taking away is that Daryl knows people enough, so he's able to communicate that to Michonne, and he's telling her, okay, like, you should stay around, you'll learn things like I have, like about these the stone or what have you. And then you see later on when he's playing with him, he's frustrated by it. It's because while Michonne is, she's convinced at this point that maybe she should stick around. He's also annoyed that with Daryl learning things about people, while it's good, it helps you out, makes you friendly or whatever, it makes you feel like you're integrated into the group more. You also learn things that maybe you don't want to learn, such as Bob's alcoholism, how that ended up pissing him off. Like Daryl tried to impart some knowledge on Bob and tell him, it's not your fault that Zach died and what have you. But then it turns around on him, and Bob did something that was really foolhardy and really made him angry and regretting opening up to Bob perhaps. So it just felt like a little mini arc for Daryl, I think, while it also connects to the greater story going on involving the other characters like Michonne and Bob and what have you.
And the other thing that Brian mentioned in the voicemail was the use of the repeating pattern of I-titled episodes. This one being Indifference, next week's being another word that starts with the letter I. I have no idea what that could mean, but I'm going to guess that it's a coded message letting us know that by the end of these 4 episodes, someone will be wearing glasses. So, without any further ado, that's it for this week's episode. We're going to do our outro now, of course, and then we'll look forward towards next week on The Walking Dead. So, until next time, if you'd like to leave us a voicemail, well, record an MP3 and send it through an email to comments@walkingdeadtv.com, and the actual voicemail number should be up soon. Or you can just send us a regular email at comments@walkingdeadtv.com. We'd love to get it. We'd love to hear more voicemails. They're awesome. It's nice to hear them again. Check out hhwlod.com for all of our great shows, like Half Hour Wasted, Long Box of Doom, The Black Box, Out Now, Jersey Shore, The Ichabod, Cranecast talking about Sleepy Hollow over there on Fox, or even The Shield podcast talking about Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. over on ABC. If you like it, if it's nerdy, there's a good chance we're talking about it on some podcast or 3 or 4 at hhwlod.com or walkingdeadtv.com. Lots of fun stuff. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter at WDTV Podcast and at HHWLOD_network. I'm at Jordan FRM Jersey. Aaron is at Aaron's PS3. Russ is at R Latham. And Jim is at Yoda Jones. And so until there's no more room left in hell and the dead walk the earth, remember, I really, really, really like Breaking Bad. And next week on The Walking Dead, reminder, this could be mildly spoilery, although it's a very vague episode description we have from AMC. Season 4, Episode 5 will be entitled Internment. It'll be the 4th of 4 I-titled episodes. And the very vague synopsis we have from AMC is multiple enemies put pressure on Rick and the group. What does it mean? We don't know, but we'll know.
It's absolutely nothing. It's as vague as almost every other synopsis they get. No offense.
Next week on The Walking Dead, zombies may appear as the group does stuff.
Yes, and things.
Stuff and things.
And things.
I love food and stuff. It's where I buy all my food and most of my stuff.
And things.
Hey, did you guys saw my Halloween costume, correct?
Yes, Aaron dressed up as
Lee from the Walking Dead game.
Lee
And
Everett.
I was at the perfect geeky party because there were lots of gamers there and they all got it, so I was very happy with it.
Nice. And I loved your little Xbox controller pad there, button pad.
It had
So,
I'd
the
written phrases on the back of it too, so you could select a button and I'd respond like, "My name is Lee," or "I'm looking for Clementine."
Nice.
Of course,
Well
voiced
played.
by the awesome Dave Fenway, voice of Hulu and Hulu Plus. Well, I think that's it for this week's episode. I'm Jordan, he's Aaron, he's Russ, he's Jim. Have a good week, everybody.
Hello.
Hi, welcome to the Dracula podcast for the Jonathan Rhys Meyer series on NBC.
I enjoyed the first episode. I haven't watched the second yet.
It's kind of like in the Sleepy Hollow thing of being goofy enough that it works for me.
Yeah, for sure.
It kind of also reminded me of the Sherlock Holmes Robert Downey Jr. movies.
Yeah.
Kind of recast a character
But-
in a new light.
What it feels like, it's Bruce Wayne, the TV show. It just happens to be Dracula. It's set in the
Right.
late 1800s. So, but it's like Playboy millionaire by day, this dark Avenger guy by night. It just happens to be Dracula,
Yeah,
a superhero.